Okay, we saw yesterday the sugya of the korban chatos having the capacity to be magdish, something that it touches. We saw the pasuk was kol yiga bibsara, anything that touches bibsara, that touches yikdash. That's what the pasuk says, pasuk chaf. And the Gemara wanted to know, since this is in the parsha of Zois Taras Chatas, that's in the parsha of Chatas, how do you know it exists in every other korban? So we quoted a pasuk, Zois Taras Oila, quoted a pasuk, Zois Taras Oila, this is the Taras of the Oila, and the Mincha, and the Chatas, and the Shlamim, meaning we put together a pasuk that makes a hekesh, a comparison between all of the above. And as we saw yesterday, we jumped ahead to show Chatas, the mention of Chatas is to teach me that just like a Chatas miskadeshes beblua, anything it touches, and it absorbs from it is kodesh. Hu adin, and throughout the hekesh, everything will be kodesh. Now we didn't get there yet. We just answered the question, but we began, and the first thing you mentioned was oila, and we learned that an oila teaches us that shchita of a korban has to be al yedei a kli. It has to be through a kli sharis. It has to be with a knife. Okay, it has to be with a knife. Then we're up to mincha. What exactly do we learn from mincha? So we begin today's shir 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines up. Mincha, and the pasuk says, "Zois taras la'oila ula mincha." What halacha do we learn from mincha to add that all the other korbanos are hookish too? Ma mincha ina necheles ela lezichrei kahuna. A mincha is only eaten by male kahanim. Avkol einam necholim ela zichrei kahuna. So to all are only eaten by zichrei kahuna. Ma'hi. What does that mean? Ichatas v'asham. If you tell me we're learning at chatas v'asham from mincha, just like mincha is eaten by only males, so too chatas v'asham are eaten only by males. On that we say, ksibuhu. It says by them openly. Kol zacha b'kohanim yochlenu. So I don't need the hekesh to mincha to teach me that. It says openly, all zacha b'kohanim yochlenu. All zacha b'kohanim should eat it. So what do you mean that you need mincha for? Vi shalmei tzibur. And if you're going to tell me the shalmei tzibur, the shlamim, miribui dekra'asi, that I learned from what? From the ribuy of the pasuk. What does it say? B'kodesh hakadoshim tachlenu kol zacha yochel so. Limin al shalmei tzibur sheina nechalim ela lezichrei kahuna, that they're only eaten by zichrei kahuna. So let's see the source for that. Ban Tosos. B'kodesh hakadoshim tachlenu kol zacha yochel so. Limin al zichrei shalmei tzibur, that they're eaten by a male. So in other words, I don't need the hekesh to mincha to teach me that. I don't need to teach me chatas or asham, and I don't need it to teach me shalmei tzibur. Hai kro b'parshas koirach. It's in the parshas koirach in Perek Yud Ches. V'afal gab de zivchei shalmei tzibur like siv hasam, even though it doesn't mention zivchei shalmei tzibur. Even the chsiv b'hai kro kodesh yelecha, it says it should be kodesh. The gabe kivsiyat seres ksiv b'parshas emor ela kahanim kodesh yiyu. LaHashem lekahanim mistaber dibidu mayri. Mistaber, it's speaking about what? That since kodesh. So mistama, it's when it says kochim, it's speaking about shalmei tzibur. Now, guys, a shlamim of a yachid is eating by a female also. So this whole limud comparison has to be to shalmei tzibur, because the shlamim of an individual, a shalmei nedava chagiga, is eaten by what? By females as well. So this has to be speaking about what? Shalmei tzibur. And therefore, Tosis is pointing out it's from the commonality of the word kodesh that appears in this pasuk and by the kivtziat seres that are brought on shuas. Okay, so l'chayra we have a kasha. We have a kasha. One hand you tell me you learn it out from mincha, another one you're telling it out from the pasuk b'kodesh kedoshim. So the Gemara answers Tanayi. It's machlekes Tanayim. Amid Aleph. Ikad the nafgilei. May hacha. There are those who learn from mincha. And there are those who learn from the pasuk of kodesh hakadoshim. Okay. Now, how did we get into this? We wanted to know that the din of absorption of a korban, that it gets the halacha of the korban, the chumrah of the korban that it comes from. We learn it from chatos. How do you know it applies to everything else? And it's this pasuk chatos. The mention of the word chatos in the pasuk of Zois Taras La'olam Lemincha L'chatos. Ma chatos miskadeshes beblua. Just as chatos is miskadeshes with beblua, with what it absorption. I've called miskadeshes beblua, so too everything is miskadeshes beblua. And this is why we brought it in the first place. Now, says Rashi. Rashi's going to ask a kasha. Machatas, a third thin line. Machatas mekadesh beblua. That it's magdish, it's mekadesh something else. Al yedei the blia through the absorption of its taste. V'afa gad b'minchanami ksiv kol sheyiga ba yigdash. Right? The mekadesh is beblua. For Rashi kasha. Why do I need to learn it from chatas? It says it by mincha as well. On that, Rashi says it's necessary to make the hekesh to chatas and not to mincha. The mincha loy matzi yolfi. You can't learn out belua of that is mekadeshes from mincha. The ikla meimar loy iskish lemincha. We don't make the hekesh to mincha. Elo le'inyan zichrei kahuna. Aval le'inyan belua the mincha dafka. Why the rechicha the mivla. The mincha is very soft, guys. It's flour. Flour is easy to absorb from something else, right? And also its viscosity is to give over to something else. So Rashi's by the way question, fellas. We say the chatas is what we learn out the din of belua. You could learn that from mincha also, just like we use mincha v'sichrei kahuna. And we said it's machlokes tanoim, where you learn it out from there, where you learn it out from the pasuk kedoshim. You could have learned out also. You could have thought to learn out from mincha this halacha of miskadeshes beblua. You could have learned that out. Kemash malon that you can't learn it out because you'd say dafka mincha doesn't exist that way because of its softness and its ability to absorb and give off. Mashen kein wada a chatas, which is harder in nature. I would say not. Kemash malon we learn from chatas. Back by us, and then the next one was asham. Ma asham ein shvir v'shilya kadosh by, just like a asham, the baby and the shilya, the sack that it's in, is not kaddish. Av kol ein shvir v'shilya kaddish. So too, any shvir v'shilya is kaddish. Now, when a baby is born from a carbon, then it's kaddish. When it's in the womb, it's not. Where do we learn that from? We learn it from an asham. How do you learn it from an asham? Because an asham can't have a baby, because an asham is always a zachar. An asham is always a male. So just like there's no din of baby by asham, there's no meaning when it's inside, it's kodesh. Hu din, even where it's shayach, by where it's a female, when it's inside the womb, there's no din of Rashi being specifically bringing the imurim, the kloyos and the imurim of the baby, you would not bring on the mizbeach. So says the Gemara, Ksavar v'lodes kochim b'havevasan hein kedoshim. When the babies of karbonis get their kedusha b'havayasan, that's when they have havaya. Havaya means when it is, when it is. So when it's in this world, that's when it gets its kedusha. Now, you might say, 1 second, how can I learn out a female from a male? A female is possible and a male is not possible. So v'don and efsha will learn out females, mishi efsha, in this case where it's not possible. And therefore you're going to learn out. So going back to yesterday's daf, going back to the pasuk. Sleish taras la'oila. We're going to learn out dafka a knife, and not a rock, and not a reed. Ula mincha. We're going to learn a mincha that zichrei kahuna. L'chatas. We're going to learn out the din of belua. We're going to learn out the din of it giving off. Ul asham, we can learn at the din of asham that and not the baby when it's in the womb. The final thing, not the second to the final thing, ul miluyim. Now the miluyim was the 7 days of the 7 days in the miluyim of that they went ahead and they consecrated the base of the Mishkan. Now there's two types of nicer fellas. There's nicer was classic, where the carbon was brought and it's left over. Then there's nicer of a carbon that you don't need. So let's say you want to bring in a dava. You guys say, listen, I'm bringing this carbon in dava, but just in case something happens to it, I'm having an insurance policy. I'm bringing another carbon. Once you bring the first carbon, the second one is like ishtikal nicer. What halacha does that get? Okay, that's what we're going to learn from Miluyim. Says the Gemara, Ma Miluyim, Moisreihem, the nicer b'sreifa, af balechayim b'moisreihem, Miluyim, Moisreihem b'sreifa, the nicer is b'sreifa. The ein balechayim b'sreifa, but the leftover Miluyim isn't. Afkol Misrayim B'Sreifa, so too all Noiser is B'Sreifa. Vein Balichaim is Misrayim. So if you have Noiser of a live carbon, you don't bring it over. Where do you learn it from? Miluyim. By Miluyim, there was no leftover because it's carbon SIBA, so they didn't even have an insurance policy. And therefore, we're learning out from there, just like by over there, the mice is not burnt, that leftover carbon, meaning that is alive. Balichayim, so too. Okay, and finally, shlomim. Ma shlomim mifalgin umispalgin. Just like shlomim, it creates pigel and it itself comes pigel. Afkol mifaglin, so too everything, all karbonis mifaglin can create pigel umispaglin. Okay, so what are we speaking about? Let's see. Shita Mekubet says Yud Gimel, guys. Let's see. Shita Mekubet says Yud Gimel. Mefaglin es halechem. There'll be kivsei atzeres kesiv. This pasuk of Shlomo is said by the kivsei atzeres on Shavuos that accompany the shtei lechem. Shem choshe bezevach af halechem mefugol. If you have a machshav of pigel in the kivsei atzeres, even the shtei lechem will become pigel. So that's what mefaglin, guys. Mefaglin, they create pigel. So your carbon is creating pigel. In this case, the kivsei atzeres is creating pigel in the shtei lechem. Av kol shabo dava acher imoy. So to anything that something else comes with it, hazevach mefagloy. The zevach will go ahead and be mefagloy. Kigoin ayel nazir. You have the rim of the nazir. Shehu toyin lechem. You have like two wafers that are brought with it. Those wafers will become what? Pigel if the carbon is pigel. V'chein toida, carbon toida, the 40 loaves that are brought with it, also will become what? Pigel. Right? That's what we learn from Shlamim, Mishum De'ika Pigel, B'hu Ksivi. So that's the lashon of mefaglin mispaglin. Mefaglin, they create pigel. Where are they creating pigel? In their carbon itself. Something accompanies it. Shtei lechem, the toida, the al nazir, that accompanies misfaglin. They become pigel. Mispaglin, lashon on itself, it itself what becomes pigel. Just 1 second. So we've concluded now. We've concluded now what the limud from this pasuk with all the hekeshim, and we got into it because we needed the source for how do you know by all karbonis if there is a hot carbon that touches something else that the more chomitical carbon will give that identity to the less chomitical carbon. That's what we learned from here. Tana Mishmei Rabbi Akiva mincha b'masnit in the Mishnah or Tosefta Tana Mishmei Rabbi Akiva mincha. The pasuk says. Mincha, ma mincha miskadeshes bebelua, just like the mincha is miskadeshes bebelua, as this is what Rashi mentioned. I've called miskadeshes bebelua. So he learns it out not from chatos, he learns it out what from mincha. This halacha that it has the capacity to go ahead and give over, he learns it out not from chatos but from mincha. You have to read it by both. That the Ashmin and mincha, the ID the rechichi. Since the mincha is by nature soft, mivla, avochatas emaloi, but chatas which is hard not. V'yashmin chatas mishum the courier, because it's hot fat. So courier it penetrates. Avo mincha emaloi, I say mincha does not penetrate. So tzricha, you have to go ahead. You have to say both. So he learns out. Rabbi Akiva is learning out from mincha this concept of what that if it touches it, it goes ahead and gets the halacha of the mincha. Mincha is kachik kedashim. However, there's a tzricha by both. There's a mila, the capacity to create a penetration is by mincha because it's soft. On the other hand, it's not as it doesn't have the koyach to penetrate as much as chatas. So I needed that tzricha by both. Chatas. What do you learn from chatas? Going over that those limudim of that pasuk. Ma chatas ein a boy element achulin. Chatas, guys, comes from chulin as opposed to meiser, right? If you want to bring a carbon chatas, you can't take your meiser sheni money and buy it. You have to buy it with chulin money. Ubiyoim, chatas is only bought during the day. Ubiyada imanis, it's only bought with the right hand. Afkol, so to every carbon ain't a boy element achulin. You can't spend it with your meiser money. Ubiyoim, meiser sheni money. It has to be bought during the day. Ubiyada imanis. The chatas minalon. How do you know chatas? These dinim that it's from minachulin and biyadai hayimanis and they're only during the day. Amar Chris Namakra says v'hikra v'aronis parachatas hashaloi, and this is by Yom Kippur. It says the Aaron will bring the parachatas hashaloi, mishaloi v'lei mishal tzibur v'lei mishal ma'isa. So we learn now what? Not from his own funds, not from the tzibur's funds, and not from ma'isa funds. Okay, so that's the first thing. Again, we said 3 dinim, guys. We said what are the 3 dinim? 1, not ma'isa money. 2, not during the day, only during the day, and 3, only right hand. That's what we're learning from Chatos. Now the Gemara is questioning that. I understand. I have a source now for what? For Chatos teaching me Maisa, because Aaron's korban was the power was the Chatos, and it says Hashaloi, Mishaloi, V'lei Mishal Maisa. But if I would ask anybody over here, how do you know a korban has to be brought during the day? You'd all tell me it says Bayom Tsevoso. It's a pasuk. It's not a limit from a Chatos. Bayom Tsevoso. I don't need a chatas to teach me that then. I know that then from Yom Savoso. And from Kedenis, but you're right. It just schlepped it along. That's not the source of Yom Savoso. It just mentioned over here. In other words, Einachinami chatas is during the day. And Kedenaspa, because the source is Yom Savoso. Biyode Hayamanis. And Biyode Hayamanis, why do I need chatas to teach me Biyode Hayamanis? The Rabbi Archana Nafka. I learned that from Rabbi Archanas then. Dama Rabbi Archana, Amreish Lakish, Kalmakim Shenemar Etzba Vikahuna. Anytime it says the word Etzba or Kahuna, guys, not both, either one, Eina Ela Yamin. So why do I need Chatas to teach me that? I have another source to teach me that. I have what? I have Rabbi Archanas then. Either Etzba, anytime the Torah says Etzba or Kahuna, it means right. It says the word the same Torah, it's Kedei Naspa. You're right. So 3 din, the din of Chulin and not Maisa, the din of Yoim and the din of right, 2 or 3 we just mentioned, but we just mentioned them. In other words, Rabbi Shimon says, if it says etzba, you're right, it means the right hand. But if it says kahuna, it doesn't mean the right hand. So I needed chatas for all the cases where it said just kahuna. Again, if you hold like Rabbi Archana, it's either etzba or kahuna creates right. According to Rav Shimon, only etzba creates right. Only etzba. Kahuna alone won't create right. So very good. Like Rav Shimon, you know why you need chatas to teach me right? In the places where it only says kahuna and it doesn't say etzba. That would be a mahalach why to mention right. Asham. Okay, we learn asham to teach me of babies, right? That the no babies, the imurim of the babies not are burnt. Ma asham atzmoisav mutarim. Just like an asham, it's at samais, it's bones on mutter. Avkol atzmoisav mutarim. Rashi brings, fellas, you could use it 4 lines up. Atzmois mutarim. Lasas men kalim. Ani shemati sheinecha lekahanim v'noiser batzamas leishayach ela bedavar necha. Okay, so it's mentioned. What does it teach me? That you're able to make a bone china from a bone. You can make a flute from a bone. In other words, the different things you will be able to make, and you wouldn't say that it's kodesh that you can't go ahead. That's what you learn from an asham. Amarava. Now it says pshitali amid base. Pshitali dam chatos lemata. Going back, guys, to our halacha of kibbutz, right? Going back to, and this is going to be the final time we use it. It's like an old friend by now. So this din, now the din of Marika and Shtifa, we learned by all Kabbanis. This din, the din of dam was only by chatas. This din of the dam that requires kibbutz was only by chatas. So the Gemara now has a shaila. Let's say you have a beged and there's 2 belias of what? Of blood, one on top of the other. The chatas is below and the oil is above. So toy and kibbutz, that's pashit. Because since you had a belia of chatas, dam, despite the fact now you have oila's blood on top of it, it doesn't stop. You need kibbutz because you had the bottom was chatas. Boy rava, what about this one? Dam oila lamata v'dam chatas lamayla. You have a spritz of oila below, does not require kibbutz, and above it you have a spritz, meaning on top of it you have a spritz of chatas, which requires kibbutz. What's the shaila? Mishum neigeyahu, because it's touching the beged v'neigeya. and therefore it would require kibus. Dilma mishum beluahu, absorption. V'halei bala. If it's on top of the blood of the oila, it's not absorbed in the beged. It's touching the blood of the oila. So it's nageya touching. Then what? Then it's touching, and you need kibus. But if it's only belua, then I would say you do not need it. That's the kasha. Hada pashta. Rava was pashta later on. The ain tun and kibus. It does not require kibus. He said, we after not nageya, we go after belua, and the fact that it wasn't belua does not require kibus. Now the din of chatzitza, fellas, is roiv umakbid. To midaraisa, for something to be chatzitza, you need roiv of the person, roiv of the beged, and the person's makbid. With that in mind, Amarava, pshitali dam al bigdoi. If a person has dam on his beged, chaytzitz, right? It's chaytzitz, so you can be toivel the beged, right? That's tamei. It won't become tahar. If you have dam on a beged, it's considered a chatzitza. You have to wash it out before you do tefillah. Then tabachu. However, if he is a butcher, in chaytzitz. Why? Because he's not makbid. A butcher is not makbid, having on his garment, having. So even if it's a tamei, it comes tamei, the garment, and it has so you have two individuals, but the same garment, the same tumah. Get tamei al dei sheretz, and they have the same amount of blood on it. For one individual, it's a chatzitza, a regular Joe, but for a butcher, it would not be chatzitza because he's not makbid. The butcher lives with blood. Revav al bigdoi, if he has some grease or some type of fatty thing, chaytzeitz. V'moicha revavu, if he's a grease merchant, ain't a chaytzeitz, the same din. Boy rava, dam u'revav al bigdoi, this is probably why you mentioned both. Let's say he has both on it. Mahu, im tabachu, typically mishum revav. If he's a butcher, say that it's a chatzitza because of the grease. V'moicha revav, and if he's a grease merchant, typically that it's chatzitza mishum dam. So l'chayra, what's your shaila? Me'manushach. If he's a butcher, he only cares. He's not makbid on blood, but he is makbid on shmutz, on this grease. And if he's grease merchant, he's only makbid on grease. He's not makbid on. He's makbid on dam. So again, if as we're saying with the rice, it's akpada, right? It's a akpada of what of what's on it. So the in this case, they should go ahead and require it will be a chatzitza because he only cares about one of them, not the other. And from like tzricha, the ovid havaha. Guys, he's a butcher, grease merchant, or a grease merchant butcher. Achada loy kapid, and the shaila is, on one he's not makbid, atarti kapid, and therefore it would be a chatzitza, because two out of two is makbid. Idilma, atarti nami loy kapid, or maybe on two he's also not makbid, and therefore it would not be a chatzitza. Teiku, the rumor remains shver, and on that note, hajul lecha dam chatas, hajul lecha dam chatas, hajul dam chatas, and I plan on starting tomorrow the new parak.